Hello everyone. Thank you very much for joining me in this last topic, last chapter for managerial economic. Right. Now we are moving in the chapter or lesson number 14, a manager's guide to government in the marketplace, which is we try to identify four sources of market failure, explain why the market power reduces social welfare, and identify two types of government policies aimed at reducing debt weight loss, and show why externalities can lead competitive market to provide socially inefficient quantities of goods and services, explains how government's policies such as the Clean Air Act can improve resource allocation, and then show why competitive market fail to provide socially efficient levels of public goods, and explain how that governments can mitigate these inefficiencies. Okay, and a few of learning objective that we will get. So throughout of this subject, we have treated the market as a place where firm and consumer come together to trade goods and services with no intervention from government. But as you are aware, rules and regulation that are passed and enforced by government enter into almost every decision firms and consumers make. So as a manager, it is important to understand the regulation passed by government, why such regulation have been passed, and how they affect optimal managerial decision. So we will begin by examining four reasons why free market may fail to provide the socially efficient quantities of goods, like market power, externalities, public goods, and incomplete information. So our analysis include an overview of government policies designed to alleviate this market failure, and explanation of how the policies affect managerial decision. Okay, from this overview, you can see the market failures from market power, externalities, public goods, incomplete information. Okay, so the power of politicians to institute policies that affect the allocation of resources in market provide those adversely effect with an incentive to engage in lobbying activities. So we will illustrate the underlying reason for this type of rents seeking activities. Finally, we will examine how these activities can lead politicians to impose restrictions such as quotas and tariff in market affected by international trade. So as you can see from these slides, one of the main reason for government involvement in the marketplace is that free markets do not always result in the socially efficient quantities of goods at socially efficient prices. So in this section, we will consider why market do not always lead to socially efficient outcomes, and then examine how government policies designed to correct market failures affect managerial decision. Okay, so we will begin by examining market failure due to the presence of market power. So market power, as you can see from here, is the ability of a firm to set a price is bigger than marginal cost. Price is bigger than marginal cost. Okay, and firm with market power produce socially inefficient output level. for firm with market power produce socially inefficient output level. Sometimes it's too little output, and price exceed the marginal cost, and dead weight loss. That means dollar value of society's welfare loss. So this figure, okay, can explain about this. And so actually you learn in previously in chapter 2 and 8 that a social welfare defined as the sum of consumer and producer surplus is maximized at the output where price equal marginal cost. So the socially efficient price and output rise naturally if the industry is perfectly competitive. In contrast, a firm that has market power produces less than the society efficient level of output because it charges a price that exceeds its marginal cost of production. So in such instances, the value to society of another unit of the good is greater than the cost of the resources needed to produce the unit. So there would be a net gain to society if additional output were produced. So in this instance, government may intervene in the market and regulates the action of firm in an attempt to increase the social welfare. Okay. So from the figure that you can see from here, to see the potential of the benefit of government intervention in a market, consider a market serviced by a monopoly. So that figure show the monopoly's demand, marginal cost and marginal revenue, assuming the monopolies must charge the same price to all consumer in the market. So the profit maximizing output in QM, profit maximizing output in QM. Okay. And this unit are sold at the monopoly price, PM. So at this price, consumer pay more for the last unit of output than it costs the producer to manufacture and sell it. So total social welfare, under monopoly is the region that we label in okay. Sorry. So this area, okay. So notice that the area of a triangle in the deadweight loss, in the red area of the monopoly welfare that would have accrued to society if the industry were perfectly competitive, but it's not realized because of the market power the monopolists enjoy. So the failure of the market to fully maximize social welfare is due to market power. The deadweight loss triangle provides a measure of this welfare loss to society. Okay, the government use antitrust policy to enact and enforce laws that restrict the formation of monopolies. So the rationale of this policy is that by preventing monopoly power from emerging, and deadweight loss of monopoly can be avoided. So in some instances, however, the presence of economies of scale makes it desirable to allow the formation of the monopoly. So in these cases, government attempts to reduce deadweight loss by regulating the price charged by the monopoly. So this antitrust policy attempts to eliminate the deadweight loss of monopoly by making it illegal for manager to engage in activities that foster or encourage monopoly power, such as a price fixing agreement and other collusive practices. Okay. So among of other things, the Sherman Act makes it illegal for managers of US firm to collude with other domestic or foreign firms. Thus, even though that's OPEC is not bound by US law, it is composed of foreign nation. The manager of US oil company cannot legally participate in the OPEC oil cartel. So the interpretation of antitrust policy is largely shaped by the court, which rule on ambiguities in the law and previous cases. Okay. So this is like the previous cases like in oil industry, US versus Standard Oil of New Jersey in 1911. You can see the example from the previous case, charged with attempting to fix price of petroleum product. Okay. A few methods they use to enhance the market power, like physically threat to shippers and other producers, setting up artificial companies, espionage and bribing tactics, engaging in restraint of trade, attempting to monopolize the oil industry. So the result from there, okay, result you can see first result, okay, Standard Oil dissolved into 33 subsidiaries. Result 2, new Supreme Court ruling, the rule of reason, so stipulates that not all trade restraints are illegal, only those that are unreasonable are prohibited. So based on the Sherman Act and the rule of reason, how do firms know a priori whether a particular pricing strategy is illegal? Okay. So the problem with rule of reason is that it makes it difficult for manager to know in advance whether particular pricing strategies used to enhance profit are in fact a violation of the law. So that's why Congress in US attempt to clarify its intent by more precisely defining illegal action in the Clayton Act 1914 and its amendment. So the So that makes a hidden kickback, brokerage fees, and hidden rebates illegal. So this is how that they want to clarify more clearly about the acts. And Section 3 prohibits exclusive dealing and tying arrangement where the effect may be substantially lessen competition. And 1950s, the Kefauver Act strengthened the Clayton Act in Section 7 by making it more difficult for firms to engage in merger and acquisition without violating the law. Okay. That's amend Section 7 of Clayton Act. As strengthen merger and acquisition policies Okay, horizontal merger guideline, that's merger concentration. So still remember, right, about the HHI, Huffendale Hedgeman Index. And then industry in which the HHI exceed 1,800 are generally deemed highly concentrated. So the DOJ or FTC may in this case attempt to block or merger if it would increase the HHI by more than 100. Okay. So this again, there's one of the very popular on that time, maybe the strategy in merger and acquisition was used to were used to monopoly a market. So in the present of large economies of scale, as is the case for some utility companies, especially, it may be desirable for a single firm to service a market. So in these instances, a government may allow a firm to exist as a monopoly, but choose to regulate its price to reduce the deadweight loss. So in this section, we will see how such regulation affect managerial decision and social welfare. Right, you can see from this uh, slide, how that governments regulates the monopolies, by control or monitor the price, monitor to the price. Okay. So the first, you can see from here, yeah, the problem one with marginal cost pricing, there's a possibility of average total cost is bigger than, okay, price from here. Okay, bigger than price above, a charge price. It means compare with the monopoly price. This is the PC, PC is a charge price. Okay, the first problem is marginal cost pricing, possibilities of average total cost bigger than a charge price. Okay. And the second problem with marginal cost pricing require knowledge of marginal cost. So consider the situation in here, where unregulated monopolies produce UM, as you can see from previous slide. an output of price of the price of PM PM or price of monopoly. So competitive industry would produce at QC units where marginal cost intersect the demand curve. So suppose the government impose and enforce a regulated price of price charge. Okay, so which correspond to the price a competitive industry would charge for the product given identical demand and cost condition. Okay, that's dead weight loss after regulation and dead weight loss prior to regulation. Okay. And then the shortage of the quantity of demand. So it is very important to note that the analysis in this figure can suppress the position of average total cost curve. To see why it is important to consider the position of average total cost curve, because reaching conclusion about the welfare loss arising from monopoly. Consider this in this figure, situation in this figure, where the monopolies is just breaking even at point. Okay, so to keep this from happening, the government would have to subsidize the monopoly by agreeing to compensate it for any losses incurred. So this fund would come from tax, and thus the consumer would increase indirectly be paying for the lower price through higher taxes. And moreover, the manager of a subsidized monopoly would have no incentive to keep costs low. So any losses that result would be subsidized by the government. So this is P, okay, price that regulated price, regulated price that you have to charge. So manager have to charge the customer from this. Okay. So any cost, um, so price that's below or above the cost, uh, price bill is above below the cost, that means government will subsidize it. Okay. So unfortunately, some production processes create costs for people who are not part of the production or consumption process for the good. So these external costs are called negative externalities. Negative externalities. So negative externalities is a cost borne by people who neither produce nor consume the good. For example, in here, pollution caused by the absence of well-defined property right, and government regulation may induce the socially efficient level of output by forcing firms to internalize pollution costs. So that's why it's they create a Clean Air Act in 1970s. So that's a very common example of negative externalities, pollution, right? For example, a firm that produces a textile usually creates a waste product that contain some chemical that's cancer causing. So when the textile manufacturers can dispose of this waste for free by dumping it into a nearby water on the river, it has an incentive to dump more waste into the river than is socially optimal. So to see why that the market fail to provide efficient level of output where there are externalities in production. Consider in this figure, if a firm emits a pollutant into the water as a byproduct of producing steel, a cost or negative externalities is borne by member of society. So this figure shows the negative externalities as the marginal cost of pollution to society. So this cost represent the cost to society of the tier water due to increases in steel production. So the production of only a little steel result in only minor damage to water. But as increasing amount of steel are produced, more and more pollutants collect in the water. So the marginal cost of pollution to society thus increases as more steel is produced. Assuming that the market for steel is perfectly competitive, so the market supply curve is as in this figure. Sorry. So in MC here, okay, this purple color lines. Okay. Okay, from this graph you can see, okay, it's known as this the purple color, which is the sum of marginal cost of the firm producing in the industry. So the supply curve is based on the cost paid by the steel firm. So that's if they are allowed to dump pollution into the water for free, the market equilibrium will okay, the market equilibrium is at the points you can see from here at this point, okay, at QC and PC. That's okay. We assume that perfect competitive that competitive. So where the market demand and supply curve intersect. That the result is that QC unit will be produced at purchase of a price, or PC, per unit of steel. So however, and at this quantity of output, society pay a marginal price, so on top of the price of PC paid to the steel firm. So this amount is the additional cost to society of pollution. So in particular, since the firm are dumping pollutant into the water for free, the cost of pollution is not internalized by those who buy and sell steel. Rather, society pays for the dumping of pollutant by having to endure polluted water. So if the firm were to take into account the cost of pollution to society, their marginal cost curve would become the vertical sum of some supply curve. So this is where you can see if the society pay for that marginal cost of pollution to society. So the socially efficient level of output, which take into account all the costs and benefit of producing steel. Okay, you can see in this figure is MC external plus internal. So in other words, in the presence of external cost, the market equilibrium output is greater than the socially efficient level, and the market price is below the socially efficient level. So in effect, consumer get to purchase too much output at too low a price. So the basic reason for the market failure is the absence of well-defined property right. To the steel firms believe they have the right to use the river to dump waste, and environmentalists believe that they have the right to clean a river. So this failure often can be solved when government define itself to be the owner of the environment. So it can then use its power to induce the socially efficient level of output and pollution. Okay. So that's why they implement or introduce the Clean Air Act. So another source of market failure is the provision of public goods. So goods that are non-rival and non-exclusionary in nature, and therefore benefit person other than those who buy the good. So public goods differ from most goods you consume, which are rivalrous in nature. So this simply means that when you consume the good, another person is unable to consume it as well. For example, when you buy and wear a pair of shoes to protect your feet, you prevent someone else from wearing the same pair. The consumption of shoes is rivalrous in nature. Yeah. So So non-rivals good include radio signal, lighthouses, national defense, and protecting the environment. So when you receive a radio signal in your car, you do not prevent other driver from picking up the same station in their cars. So this is in sharp contrast to your purchasing a pair of shoes. So the second aspect of public good is that it is non-exclusionary, non-exclusion, not really as exclusive. Once a public good is made available, everyone gets it. No one can be excluded from enjoying the good. So most goods and services are by nature exclusionary. For example, when a car manufacturer produces a car, it can keep people from using the car by putting a lock on the door and giving the key only to the person who is willing to pay for the car. Yeah. So goods and services such as clean air, national defense, and radio wave are non-exclusionary goods. For example, when the air is clean, so everyone gets to consume the clean air. This cannot be allocated to a single person only. So when is it about public good? That's lead the market to provide them in efficient quantities. So the answer is that that since everyone get to consume a public good once it is available, individuals have a little incentive to purchase a good. Rather, they prefer to let other people pay for it. So once it's become available, they can free ride on the effort of others to provide the good. But if everyone think this way, no one will buy the good, and it will not be available. So not one person alone may be unable to afford to purchase the good. So a concrete example will help you to see why public goods are not provided in the socially efficient quantity. Suppose individual value street light in their neighborhood because street light help prevent crime. So three people live in the neighborhood, say A, B, and C. So all three individuals have identical inverse demand function for street light. Okay, the inverse demand curve reveal how much each person value another street light. Okay. So because street light are non-exclusionary and non-rival in nature, everyone benefit once a street light is installed. For this reason, the total demand for a public good such as a street light is the vertical sum of individual inverse demand curve. So it's reveal the value of each additional street light to everyone in the neighborhood. Okay. So given people A, people B, and people C, individual demand. Okay. So this is example for public good in street light example. So since the marginal cost of street light lies above each individual demand curve for street light, so none of them will be willing to pay for even one street light on their own. Okay, since the marginal cost of each street light in this figure, you can see $54 and lies above each individual demand curve for street light. So none of them will be willing for even pay for even one street light on their own. So nevertheless, if each person paid let's say $18 per light, together they would pay 54 per light and could afford to purchase the socially efficient quantity of light. So the only way the people in this neighborhood can achieve the socially efficient quantity of light is to pool their resources. So if they accomplish this and each pay $18 per light, each will enjoy a consumer surplus of the shaded region. So the problem, however, is that each individual would be rather better off by letting the other to install the street light. So in particular, it is strategically advantageous for each person to misrepresent his or her true personal demand function. So if A, let's say, claims she did not want street light and let the others pay for them, so she will get to enjoy the light for free due to the non-rival and non-exclusionary nature of the good. So this is similar to cheating on a cooperative agreement and is called for free riding. Okay. So for market to function efficiently, participant must have a reasonable good information about things such as price, quality, available technologies, and the risks associated with working in certain job or consuming certain products. So when participants in the market have incomplete information about such thing, the result will be inefficiencies in input usage and in firms output. So consider the consumption of a cigarette. If individuals are not told that cigarettes are hazardous, so some people who currently do not smoke because of the known health risks would smoke out of ignorance of the danger of smoking. So the decision to smoke would be based on incomplete information about the danger of smoking. So for reasons such as this, government serve as a provider of information in many markets, dispensing information to consumers about the ingredient of certain food, the danger of certain product and drug, and firm print some of this information on the label of their product due to regulation imposed by government. So government even regulate the work environment by ensuring that workers are aware of the dangers of chemicals such as asbestos, and benefit of precautions such as wearing hard hat in construction job. So in this instance, the regulation are carried out by OSH, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. So one of the more severe causes of market failure is asymmetric information. So a situation where some market participants have better information than others. Okay. As we saw in the previous chapter, in chapter 12, the presence of asymmetric information can lead a buyer to refuse to purchase from sellers out of fear that the seller is willing to get rid of the product because it is worth less than they are willing to pay. So in the extreme case, the market can collapse together. For this reason, several government policies are designed to alleviate the problems caused by asymmetric information. There is some government policies to mitigate incomplete information, yeah, or as we see, yeah, certification, truth in lending, truth in advertising, contract enforcement. Yeah. So the preceding analysis shows how government policies can improve the allocation of resources in the economy by alleviating the problem associated with market power, externalities, public good, and incomplete information. So it is important to note, however, that the government policies generally benefit from some parties at the expense of others. So for this reason, lobbyists spend so considerable sum in attempt to influence government policies. So this process is known as a rent seeking. So to see that's example from rent seeking activities. So firms monetary incentive to lobby for monopoly right, as you can see. Okay, as a monopoly for profit. Firms monetary incentive to lobby for monopoly right, and then consumers monetary incentive to lobby against monopoly. Okay, so that's the deadweight loss. So firms incentive is smaller than consumers incentive. Yeah. Firm incentive is smaller than consumer incentive, but consumer incentive are spread among many different individuals. Okay. So as a result, firms often succeed in their lobbying effort. Sometimes rent seeking manifests itself in the form of government involvement in international market. So such policies usually take the form of tariff or quota that are designed to benefit a specific firm and workers at the expense of the others. So in the next section, you can see uh, we will try to examine how that's government tariff and quota policies affect the managerial decision. Okay. So the purpose of quota is to limit the number of units of a product that foreign competitors can bring into the country. Okay. So that can reduce competition, thus resulting in a higher price, lower consumer surplus, and a higher profit for domestic firm. For example, a quota on Japanese automobile import limit the number of cars Japanese automakers can sell in US. So this reduces competition in the domestic automobile market, which result in higher car price, higher profit for domestic firm, and lower consumer surplus for domestic consumers. So the domestic producer does benefit at the expense of domestic consumer and foreign producer. And then tariff like quotas are designed to limit foreign competition in the domestic market to benefit domestic producer. So the benefit to domestic producer accrue at the expense of domestic consumer and foreign producer. So we will address two type of tariff: lump sum tariff and excise or per unit tariff. So a lump sum tariff is a fixed fee that foreign firms must pay the domestic government to be able to sell in the domestic market. So in contrast, a per unit or excise tariff requires the importing firms to pay the government, domestic government, a fee on each unit they bring into the country. Okay. So in conclusion, you can see in this chapter we focus on government activity actually, in the market to correct market failure caused by market power, externalities, public goods, and incomplete information. So the government ability to regulate market give market a participant on an incentive to engage in rent seeking activities such as lobbying to affect public policy. So this activity may extend to international market where government impose tariff or quota on foreign import to increase the profit of special interest. So in US, for example, the government influences market through devices such as antitrust enforcement and regulation, price regulation, insider trading restriction, and truth in advertising, truth in lending regulation, as well as policies designed to alleviate market failure due to externalities or public good problem. Okay. So the rule that affect the decision of future manager are spelled out in a few of document like Sherman Antitrust, Clayton X, right? So governments present great rent seeking and other of a few things to correct the markets based on the few of because of a few problem from here. Okay, I think it's not so long about this chapter, and I not really focus on final assessment on this chapter. Just want to give you some exposure about uh, a few of measure from government. Okay, in order uh, to solve a few problem caused from the market power, externalities, and eccentrics. Okay, that's all for today, and thank you very much. And until now, see you again.